Is Karen Costa, and I'm a full-time faculty member at Jones International University. This brief video will go over some best practices in communicating with your students throughout your entire course. And of course, we're not doing this just to do it. We're doing this to help our students succeed. And I want to mention all of these things are things that I do in my courses now, and they are things that I did in the courses I taught as an adjunct. So these things do take time, but they will pay off in terms of student success. So let's get started. First off, we want to create a really welcoming first week of courses. So in that first welcome week, aim to have an individual communication with each student. This will pay off for students and for you in the long run by building that relationship. That will set a foundation for everything that's to come. So reach out over the phone, text, Skype, anything to make a one-on-one connection with your students. Next, you want to make sure to post at least 2 weekly news items, okay? And each of those should introduce students to a course concept, remind them of an upcoming deadline, things like that. One of those news items each week should either be audio or video. And D2L gives us some great options to do that. Some of you may be using other options like Collage or YouTube. That's great. But one of those news items should be audio or video. Here's what I do for announcements or news items, as we call them now in D2L. On Sunday, I post a starting announcement. I try to give students the big picture of what to expect that week and what we'll be learning that week. Then, typically around Tuesday or Wednesday, I post a midweek announcement. I like to do this to remind students to get that initial post on the forum, and anything else that's come up that I've noticed in the course, I'll mention in my midweek announcement. And then finally, around Friday and Saturday, I will post a concluding announcement to remind students of that very important Saturday deadline. And again, if I've noticed anything bubbling up, a question that maybe several students have, I will address that in my concluding announcement. So for me, 3 announcements a week is that sweet spot that really works for student success. But JIU is now requiring us to post at least 2 news items each week, and one of them is expected to be either audio or video. Next, a new expectation is that JIU faculty will post engaging supplementary material in the discussion at least once per week. So what are some examples of things that you can post in the forum? I've listed some here. Here's what I like to do. Discussion, not the forum. Here's what I like to do. I like to create video tutorials for my students. And because I teach first year courses, I actually create a video tutorial for each assignment. So if, for example, in Module 5, I have my Foundations Lab 5.1 assignment and a discussion or 5.2 assignment and then a 5.3 Dropbox assignment, I will create 3 short video tutorials and share that with my students in the discussion. Students have told me this is really valuable to them, and it helps explain to students who don't just learn by reading the directions. It's helpful for me to explain things. I've listed some other examples here of things that you can post for engaging supplementary material. Next, make sure that you respond to students within 24 hours. Our students are working, they have families, they lead very busy lives, and they've chosen JIU for a reason. We need to live up to those expectations and help our students succeed. So if a student asks you a question, for example, over JIU email, within 24 hours you should respond to their question. And the same goes for other forms of communication. So make sure you have a plan in place to manage your own time so that you can get back to students within 24 hours. One thing that I do that I found is really helpful is I have chosen to text with my students. And you might think that's more time consuming. I've actually found that saves me a lot of time. I can clear out some of the really quick questions over text. And if it's a more advanced question or needs more in-depth information, I'll tell students it needs to come via email or, in jest, I would say via a forum post. But a lot of the texts just kind of clear out those quick, hey, what's this? Hey, when's this due? Type questions. And then that I find saves me time rather than having to answer those over email. I can just quickly text, questions answered, check. Okay, but again, 24-hour response time to student questions. In addition to answering questions within 24 hours, students expect and deserve timely grading and feedback on their assignments. So you'll see here that the discussion and Dropbox assignments should be graded within 5 days of the due date, preferably sooner. So think about those Dropbox assignments. Students submit them by Saturday. If we take the full 5 days and we don't grade that until Thursday, and let's say the next week's assignment is going to build upon that assignment, then we really limit students to viewing our feedback and applying it on Friday and Saturday when the next assignment is due. So, and if our students work or have family responsibilities, that can really put them in a tight spot. I do start grading on Sunday, and I aim to have my grading done by Tuesday. And I communicate this very clearly to my students. And if anything changes, if life happens, my kid gets sick, whatever, I will let them know that it will take a bit longer and that it will be done by Thursday. But my students typically know they can depend on me to get their feedback on their assignments by Tuesday. So you have 5 days, but aim for sooner to help support student success. The other thing that's important to mention is that feedback to students is important. It's important to their success. So a good job, Joe, to me, that's really not feedback. And JIU expects much more of that. So use the rubrics that are now built into D2L. We're very excited about that. And show students where they fall in the rubric. This is a really great way to motivate students. If they fall into the second column, they can now work to get into the first column. So it's a visual depiction of our expectations. Be specific. So tell students, don't just say, I'm concerned about your writing mechanics. What about writing mechanics? And then give them a specific example. I always use names when providing feedback. I always use names to connect with students because feedback can be quite an intimidating experience for many of our students. So I try to soften that by always using their name, and I always focus on the positive. I always try to start with the positive and end with the positive, and then put any more critical feedback in the middle. Focus on improvement. What does the student need to do for you next week to improve on these assignments? It shouldn't be a mystery. Tell them exactly what they need to do to improve and be specific and positive. JIU will also now be requiring for folks to annotate their Dropbox assignments of students when providing feedback. I know that many of you are already doing this. This is one of my grading practices and has been for a while. I use track changes in Word, and we'll be giving you a tutorial specifically on that separately. And I put some red on those papers, just like I would if I was doing it by hand. So I track the changes in Word, I save that document, and I post it back to the student to review so that they have not only my general big picture feedback and the rubric, but they have specific edits that they can make. Some of you might want to do it the old-fashioned way. In theory, I'm not advocating this, but if you'd like to give it a try, you could print out a student's paper, grade it with a pen, the old-fashioned way. You could then scan it and post that back to your students. So if you're more comfortable doing that, as long as the papers are annotated, that is a requirement. And on an ongoing basis, we should be coaching our students about plagiarism. So reminding students of the importance of academic integrity in their work, helping them with their citations, sending them to the APA guide, which is located in course tools in D2L. And if you need support on this, or unfortunately, if you have to report an incident of plagiarism, you can contact Student Affairs. But hopefully, I have found that being proactive and giving students the support ahead of time helps them avoid plagiarism. In my experience, most cases of plagiarism are a result of panic and poor planning on the student's part. Less so any intentional desire to trick me. So I coach students around time management, and I let them know that I am watching out for plagiarism. Again, proactive I find is better than reactive. But if you need to react, contact Student Affairs for support. So in summary, how do we communicate for student success? We want to be present in our courses and we want to be real. We've talked about that throughout these training videos. Instructor presence is critical to student success. So be as present as possible in your courses, answering questions, engaging in the discussion, posting news items, and be real for your students. They should get to know you over these 8 weeks. They should be able to describe what kind of professor you are. You don't want to be just a figment of their imagination. You want to be present and you want to be real. And that concludes this video on communicating for student success. Thank you for watching.